I think if Bernie ran in 2016, it would have been a lot closer race.
Preach.
I think a lot of people did not trust Hillary Clinton. She wasn't authentic. She flip-flopped on every single issue under the sun.
Wait, Jacob, you're telling me that we need to get them to Pokemon Go to the polls wasn't a landing message to your average person? Wow, wild.
No. But you've got a guy like Bernie who, again, I disagree with everything this man stands for. I don't understand why on earth you would take your honeymoon to the Soviet Union. There's some craziness going on there. But at the same time, he connects with voters because people view him as authentic.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on another fun-filled episode, of The Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered, by the best heart health supplement in the world. If you want to lower your resting heart rate, lower your blood pressure while improving your pump at the gym, stick around. We're going to talk about that later in today's episode. But first, we're digging into all things strategy, momentum, and specifically looking at the right side of the political aisle. Going back to the end of 2023, throughout 2024, you could feel it. The vibes were changing. The winds of change were amongst us. And with that going forward, will those winds of change continue pushing forward throughout 2025 and into 2026? Joining me here on the show today is Jacob Lane. We're going to discuss that all and more. Jacob, welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. How you doing?
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate
it. Absolutely, my man. Looking forward to today's conversation. I love talking strategy. I love talking messaging and communication skills. So definitely an area I know a lot of the folks in the more political right are starting to pay more attention to as well, especially as we start to actually get some wins on the wall. But before we dig into that today, Jacob, do us a favor. Introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience. Who are you? Why do you care about this stuff? And what are we talking about here? Maintaining this momentum into 2025 and beyond.
Well, again, Brian, thanks for having me. My name's Jacob Lane. I serve as Chief of Staff to Richard Viguerie. For those of you who don't know who Richard Viguerie is, he's the godfather of conservative direct mail. So all those letters you get in the mail asking you for donations, my boss created those. And he's done a great job harnessing that for over 60 years. I'm also a Republican strategist, and I'm a frequent contributor to Newsmax Media. And Brian, just because you mentioned it, I did live in the Hoosier State for 6 years and worked in the Hoosier State for 6 years. So
there you go. I'm still kind of getting my feet wet here. I moved out here in 2022, right during the craziness of COVID. I was out in Philadelphia for just shy of a decade. So yeah, I jumped over here, and definitely a big change. And we saw that specifically not just from the culture, but also from the politics, which how about that, Jacob? That is actually a good transition to today's conversation, because we're going to be talking about your article over at Newsmax, and we'll be building around this. But the energy of CPAC 2025, CPAC is the Conservative Political Action Conference, must be nurtured to grow the GOP. That's the argument you made over at Newsmax. I think this, transcends not just the GOP as a political party, Jacob. I think this is true throughout both the political movements as well as the cultural movements, right? And you see this across the board. You have your more conservative folks. You have your more your crunchy Maha moms. You have all of these folks that the anti-war, non-interventionist camps. They're all coming together, and I think they're building something that's very unique, something I haven't seen in the political discourse in my lifetime. And it's it's making very interesting bedfellows, Jacob. Lots of folks I looked at 10 years ago, and I said, there's no way that they would ever be on board with a more, conservative, right-leaning perspective, libertarian perspective to politics and culture. Yet here we are, right? So let's talk about this. Before we dig into CPAC specifically, talk to us about what you've been seeing on the ground in terms of the changing culture. Obviously, you see it more firsthand than we're all seeing it kind of as it happens after the fact. So tell us what you're seeing as folks are knocking on doors or getting direct mail to the door. What's been the feedback? Jacob, floor is yours.
Well, the first thing I think I've noticed in a long time, Brian, and I'm in my mid-30s, so I've been doing this, political work since I was 18. Actually, when I was even younger, my father was a county chairman. So, going door to door, canvassing, it's been in my DNA since I was about 8 years old.
By the way, I'm right there with you. My dad was a legislator for 15 years. So I grew up in that exact same world. I'm right there.
Exactly. And especially if your dad was in the state house, you were running every 2 years. So, it's perpetual campaigning. So I love this kind of stuff. But the one thing I'm seeing that gives me hope for the modern Republican Party is that the Republican Party is becoming younger. And for the first time, like I said, since I've seen in decades, it's cool to be conservative. It's cool to like Trump. It's cool to be MAGA. It's cool to be Maha. It's bringing these young people together. And for the first time, the left does not have a stranglehold on young people as they have in past elections. And they're realizing that. The other thing I'm noticing is that the Republican Party is becoming a bigger tent. We're getting African-American voters. We're getting Latino voters. We're getting Asian-American voters. We're getting more women voters. I talk about it a little bit in the piece, but when I went to CPAC, and I've been going to CPAC now for probably about 8 or 9 years, every year I always make it a point to go. And I started going during the dark days of McCain and Romney, when there was just absolutely no excitement in the room. I mean, my first vote was for McCain. I mean,
I'm so sorry.
I know, right? Talk about a letdown for a vote. I mean, but compared to who he was running to, I'm so glad I voted for him. But that's not saying a lot. But again, this enthusiasm and the fact that at CPAC now, it really did look like a microcosm of America. Whereas before, when I would go, it was sort of like a fraternity party for white frat bros.
Dude, white dudes in suits everywhere.
Exactly. And now, I went this year and it was just this sea. And I'm not lying to you, Brian. I mean, I got there at the hotel and it's just like this sea of red hats, these red MAGA hats. But underneath them are not white frat bros. They're small business owners. They're firefighters. They're policemen. They're, you still got the Wall Street types there. Of course, you're going to. It's the Republican Party. But you've got a coalition of folks surrounded around the same issues. And for like I said, this was the first year that I noticed that CPAC was younger. And CPAC has always been a young event, but it was even younger than it has been in the past. And it was diverse. And again, it represented what I think is best in America. And that's something the Republican Party has to do, is they have to keep that winning coalition together.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, you go to CPAC once every 10 years or so. I think, candidly, the last time I was at CPAC was like over 10 years ago, 2012, somewhere in there, 2013. I remember I got to meet Alan West and that was back when he was, big in the world. I got here. Hold tight. 1 second. I'll show you.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, just to show back, this is back when Marco Rubio had just gotten onto the stage, right? And he was actually like a Tea Party darling. So I had this water bottle that I had won. Are you ready for this? On the back, got Marco signing. It says, "Stay thirsty for liberty," Marco Rubio. So I saved this. What was that? Sorry.
You don't know. No. That was an infamous hearkening to when he was giving the response to the State of the Union address. Yes. And he had to reach for a water bottle. And Trump totally ridiculed him for that. But yes. Yeah,
exactly. No, but that was the vibe then. But it was still, it was still very much that suit and tie, just white guy kind of, just gathering of conservative frat bros, right? And I remember I was like, oh, man, if we want to win this ain't it, bro. This ain't it. And you just painted the picture of like all the red hats, and underneath that, very diverse groups of folks. I started my intro, the crunchy moms, the business owners. You added on the entrepreneurs, the firefighters. So I guess the question gets asked: what's changed over 10 years? It's a very short time when you really look at it in the grand scheme of things, but Jacob, a lot's happened in 10 years. So what do you think? What do you think made this change so visibly noticeable?
Well, it's a couple of things, but the first thing, and your listeners are going to laugh at this, is the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has changed. It is not the same party. Look, growing up, and I grew up in Southern Illinois, and so there were a lot of working class voters in my neck of the woods that were Democratic, that supported the Democratic Party because they thought the Democratic Party had their best interests at heart. That's no longer the case. The Democratic Party's changed. It's not the party of union halls. It's become the party of allowing men and women's sports. It's become the party of open borders. It's become the party of, we don't care about the folks in flyover country where we're from. right? They care about it's a coastal party. It's the coastal elites now. And what's so funny is and you know this too, Brian, from growing up in a Republican household, is that, you went from where the Republicans were the country club Republicans. It was that, oh, you're elite. You're a member of the Republican Party. You don't care about the small man. You don't care about the working man. That's completely been tilted topsy-turvy. And now I think voters are realizing that. The second thing is Donald Trump. Donald Trump say what you like about him. And I know a lot of people have, obviously, he's sort of the kind of person where you either really like him or you really don't. There's no middle ground really with him.
By the way, I will contest that a smidge. I think I'm one of those guys who's kind of on the middle ground, but I digress. We'll talk about that later.
Okay. All right. Hey, you're the one guy. So,
yeah.
Hey, but Donald Trump is, like him or not, he's an effective communicator. And what he's been able to do with the party is to effectively communicate to working class voters, to single moms, to young people that, look, the direction the Democratic Party is taking, it's a disaster. Donald Trump is a master of brand. He's a master of marketing, and he's been able to harness that. And look, we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, look at The Apprentice. When The Apprentice was on for, a decade plus, that's when Americans were introduced to him. You're fired. It was a sign of authority, that this guy had a command in the room and this guy was going to make things right. So I think a lot of it has to do with, the fact that the Democratic Party has changed drastically. It's not our parents' or our grandparents' Democratic Party anymore. And B, it's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is just, you will never, you never say never. You will never find another politician like Donald Trump again in probably 100 years.
Hey folks, I want to take a moment to talk about something that has truly changed my life, and that is Cardio Miracle, our incredible studio sponsor. Now, I'll be honest, when I first heard about Cardio Miracle and their claims about improving heart health, I was skeptical. But after using it for just about 2 months, I was absolutely blown away by the results. First, my blood pressure went from being consistently around 140/90 to a much more healthier and manageable 120/80. And my resting heart rate dropped from the low 70s to the high 50s. And I couldn't believe it. But the benefits didn't stop there. I started sleeping better, and I felt more energized at the gym, and my heart felt the best it's felt in years. And it's not just me. Hundreds of you, our amazing listeners, have reached out to share your own incredible experiences with Cardio Miracle. So, what is Cardio Miracle? And how does it work? It's a carefully crafted supplement that harnesses the power of nitric oxide to support optimal heart function. So, by increasing nitric oxide levels in your blood, Cardio Miracle helps relax your blood vessels, improve circulation, and it protects your heart from damage. It's like giving your heart the support it needs to function at its best. And here's the best part. We've got an exclusive offer just for you, our loyal listeners here at The Brian Nichols Show. When you head over to cardiomiracle.com and use code TBNS at checkout, you'll get an extra 15% discount on your order. Plus, with their 100% money-back guarantee, you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So, if you're ready to take control of your heart health and experience the life-changing benefits of Cardio Miracle for yourself, just click the link in the show notes or video description. Trust me, your heart will thank you. And don't wait another day to prioritize your health. Join the tens of thousands of folks who have already discovered the Cardio Miracle difference. Head to cardiomiracle.com now and use code TBNS for 15% off your order. Your journey to a happier and healthier heart starts today. And now, let's get back to the show. Donald Trump is very unique. And I think, Donald Trump was able to learn from and take away a lot of the things that worked with Rush Limbaugh. I call it the Rush Limbaughfication of America, right? When you look at how Rush Limbaugh talk radio, he was able to talk to your average person. And he did so, and he communicated in a way that really resonated with your average person. And you fast forward to where we are today, Jacob, I agree with you. I don't think we're ever going to find a candidate like Donald Trump, but I'm nervous, right? Because we see and you just outlined what Trump did that was so unique and so successful, right? He's a successful a businessman in the private sector. He was on TV. He was in people's living rooms. He became someone that you became familiar with. Even if you didn't like him necessarily, you kind of got to, in a sense, know him. And this is why when I look at the Democratic Party going into 2028 and beyond, I look at someone like a Stephen A. Smith, right? Or an AOC. Now, specifically, not AOC. I wrote an article back 2017, 2018, somewhere in there, and it was called Stop Making Fun of AOC. Because the reason was, the more you feed the fire, the more you're going to help build up her persona. And sure enough, fast forward 10 years later, and she's touring across America with Bernie Sanders and getting, tens of thousands of people to come to these events. But look at Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith, I think, is very much more a real danger, because when you look at, and I say danger not from a policy standpoint, I think Stephen A. Smith is much more middle of the road, like kind of one of those more old school blue dog-ish Democrats, right? And you see Stephen A. Smith, he was on First Take, he was on ESPN, he had his battles with Skip and with Shannon Sharp, or not Shannon Sharp, that's Skip and Shannon Sharp, but I digress. Stephen A. Smith, he's been on TV, right? People know him. And part of sales, know, like, and trust, right? So if you've been watching this guy for decades on TV, you know him, you probably like him at that point, been watching him, and dare I say, you start to trust him, maybe not from his political standpoints, but I see him on TV. I trust his sports takes, right? He always has a unique way of looking at things. And oh, by the way, here's Stephen A. Smith, going into the 2024 election and shortly thereafter, being one of the major voices on the more left side of the aisle, saying, hey, what we've been doing ain't working. We're not talking to the average person. We're not even talking to the average Democratic voter from 5-10 years ago, right? The GOP right now, Jacob, if you were to look at it in 1995, you'd be like, oh, it's the Bill Clinton Democratic Party. We got Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr., all these former Democrats. What's happening, right? But that just speaks to how far left, socially, culturally, the Democratic Party and the overarching movements have gone to the left. And it really does speak to, if you want to actually meet voters where they are, you want to help build that trust, build the persona, but also get them motivated to do something in terms of supporting your candidacy. I look at someone like a Stephen A. man, and I think, he has the pathway to follow what Donald Trump did in order to find success. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I agree with you, Brian. I don't dismiss any candidates, because look, I mean, let's harken back to 2015 when you literally had Jon Stewart and John Oliver goading Trump to run. Please run. We want you to run. This is going to be great for comedy. Well, it turned out it was great for comedy, but it wasn't so great for electoral success for the Democrats. So I'm with you, and I've been the same way. I've told people with AOC, dismiss her at your own will, because she is much more powerful and her message resonates with average folks. And let me tell you a thing about AOC. She's and again, I disagree with absolutely everything this woman stands for, but she's very smart in the sense that after the election, I don't know if you remember this, she held that town hall for people that voted for Trump in her district, but then voted for her simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And that was brilliant. It was a brilliant marketing move, because she realizes that a lot of people in her district, even though her district is wildly blue, I mean, it'd take an act of God for a Republican to win in that district, but she wanted to know why someone would support Donald Trump and also support her at the same time. And I think it's the same thing with Bernie Sanders. Look, I've been criticized for saying this. I think if Bernie ran in 2016, it would have been a lot closer race.
Preach.
I think a lot of people did not trust Hillary Clinton. She wasn't authentic. She flip-flopped on every single issue under the sun.
Wait, Jacob, you're telling me that we need to get them to Pokemon Go to the polls wasn't a landing message to your average person? Wow, wild.
No. But you got a guy like Bernie who, again, I disagree with everything this man stands for. I don't understand why on earth you would take your honeymoon to the Soviet Union. There's some craziness going on there. But at the same time, he connects with voters because people view him as authentic. They're like, look, this guy has been this way for 30, 40 plus years. Now, I would argue the one issue he has changed on that a lot of people don't realize is guns, because he used to have an A rating from the NRA before the NRA became wildly toxic in the Democratic Party. But at the same time, both of these people are authentic. So there's that authenticity that people are looking for. And just look at, let's go back to 2016 with Trump. Look at everyone he was running against. And I'm not going to lie, starting off in 2016, I was a Rand Paul guy. I still love Rand Paul. I'm more of a libertarian leaning Republican. I vote Republican, but I'm more libertarian leaning.
Did we just become best friends?
I guess we did. It's I can tell a yaller when I see one. Young Americans for Liberty. I can tell one when I see one. So look, I voted for Ron Paul in a primary. So come on.
Yep.
But I mean, look, but when Trump was running in 2016, he was running against these titans like Jeb Bush,
yep.
And others that people saw.
Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, Marco Rubio. I mean, just you have governors, senators, all of them.
Yeah, I mean, you have Senator Santorum, Rick Santorum. I mean, like there were all these different people, but Trump came out on top because at the end of the day, people trusted him. And I'll say this too: your show's a marketing show. It's all about brand. He had this specific brand. He filled a hole in the marketplace that hadn't been filled before. He was just this sort of straight shooter billionaire. I'm going to tell it to you the way it is. I'm not a politician. I never have been a politician. I take credit for that. And the fact too that you had debates and he was sitting here saying, look, yeah, I took advantage of both sides. I supported both sides because you know why? I'm a businessman. And whoever gets in, they're the ones who are going to help me. I think Americans found that very refreshing. You're saying the truth for once. This guy, he played both sides because it helped his business. And Americans at the end of the day said, yes, I trust this guy because he's that one candidate. He filled a hole in the marketplace in 2016. They were looking for a straight shooter who was going to reverse everything of the Obama era. And they were looking for that. And he was the one guy up there who was saying, I'm going to do that.
So this is the hard part of the show, Jacob, because now I need to hit you with some objections, not even objections, just more so I guess, just the realities of the world is that whenever you make a sale, right, you make the sale based on, building up the warm and fuzzies, right? You sell you sell it based on emotion, and then you have to justify that sale with facts and logic and you look at the data, but then you fast forward, right? And then there comes a time where, your buyer, they're evaluating the buying decision, right? And maybe they're putting themselves into a position where they're going to be looking to buy again, and they're going to compare options again. And what you're comparing is what I was sold versus what I actually got, right? And this is where I think a lot of folks right now are a little nervous because you go back 2016 to 2020, the Trump that we were sold and the Trump that we got. I didn't vote for the COVID pandemic Operation Warp Speed. I didn't vote for locking down all of America or putting Anthony Fauci in charge. I didn't vote for Rochelle Walensky or Deborah Birx telling me if I'm essential or not, right? And then you fast forward to 2024. I'm wondering if we're going to see some of these same issues pop up and possibly lead to another 4 years of just absolute calamity like we saw with the Joe Biden administration. Because if we're being fair, Jacob, that the Biden administration was a direct outcome of the negative sentiment towards Trump, be it fair or not. And that's where I get nervous. So talk to me about that. Do you think that there is a chance where Trump is going to overpromise and underdeliver and then thus hurt the chances of the GOP going forward?
Well, look, I mean, I think, Brian, I think there's always the possibility for that. Look, there have been, I can tell you how many candidates I've campaigned on behalf of, and, they sold me this bed of roses, and what I got was not a bed of roses. Something I can't say on the air. But it was not ever what I'm sold to. So, of course, in any political race, in any office, we're going to have that. But I think it's contingent upon the Trump administration. They really have to follow through their promises on this one, because, and I think they're starting to, Brian. Look before the election, we were talking about the border nonstop. I mean, when's the last time you can remember there was even a report on the border? All I kept hearing from the Biden administration was, we need more resources. We need more resources. No, actually what we needed was a new administration because you weren't enforcing the laws that were already on the books. So that issue has sort of become a non-issue now. Look, it's going to be contingent upon Republicans in Congress to pass his agenda. And so far, I'm not going to lie, after 100 days, I was expecting a little more, but they still have time. They need to pass the tax cuts that he was promising the American people to make those permanent for the working class Americans. But in terms of other stuff, though, our viewing on the world stage, I think we're more respected now than we were with Biden. Look at the just this week, you had the UK Prime Minister come over here, Keir Starmer, and we've got a trade deal now with the UK. So again, I think this is all contingent on something that politicians don't like to do, which is keeping their promises and keeping their trust with the American voters. Because look, 2026 is going to be rough. I don't care what anyone says. It's a sitting party in power. Look, you've got the big media that's totally aligned against Donald Trump. So they're going to have to, number one, defeat the media narrative that's coming out daily, and number two, they're going up against historic headwinds. And I'm not saying, the Senate looks pretty good for the most part. I know that we didn't catch a couple breaks with Brian Kemp in Georgia and Sununu in New Hampshire, but the Democrats are playing defense in so many states in the Senate. I don't think they're going to overtake the Senate, but the House is certainly in jeopardy. And that could pose a real problem for Trump going forward if he loses the House.
Well, and that's a great transition back to our conversation around your article, right? Which is we look at here, CPAC, going into 2025. Oh, I hit the wrong button. There we go. Oh, where did it go? There it is. StreamYard has like 13 different buttons. I knew I was going to get the right one once I actually hit it. So, looking here at your article, so the energy of CPAC in 2025 must be nurtured to grow the GOP, right? And this is obviously talking about heading into 2026. So I'm going to give you the floor here, Jacob. Give us your prescription. What is the battle plan? What is the blueprint for GOP success, both from a policy standpoint, but also a cultural, electoral standpoint there as well?
Well, look, so from a policy standpoint of view, I think the Republican Party needs to do three things to be successful. One, they were elected to secure the border. They've done that. I think more can be done on that front, and I think they need to do more on that front, but they've done that. So I think they can check that off, that's a non-issue now. Good work. The second thing they need to do is the economy. Look, people are very afraid with these tariffs, and look, I'm sort of one of those people that we see the market fluctuations every day. I understand that there have been countries that have been ripping us off for decades, and the need I'm going into the understanding of the Trump administration. I understand why they think there's a need for these, but they have to do a better job selling these with the American people. Again, so I'll talk about that marketing and that branding. They have to do a good job selling these to the average American that really doesn't know the first thing about tariffs, let alone where countries are on the globe. It's just they're hearing what they're hearing from the mainstream media, which is that these are bad. This is tanking Wall Street. This is bad for your 401k. This is bad for Social Security, all those things, right? And they have to go out and combat that. And the first thing they need to do is pass the Trump tax cuts, make those permanent for working class voters and Americans, and then they can add on to that. But that's the first thing they need to do. The third thing is restoring our respect on the global scale. Look, Trump said, he was going to put an end to the war in Ukraine. I'm all for ending the war in Ukraine. I think a lot of libertarian-leaning voters are. We're tired of spending money over there that, for a war that, quite frankly, could go on for decades, if not our entire lifetimes. So we've really got to put up with that. Also, the whole situation in Israel, and just the whole geopolitical scale. So that's the prescriptions. But the main thing the Republicans have to do is they have to be better marketers. And Republicans so far, and no disrespect to the RNC or the NRSC or the NRCC, but unfortunately, none of them are Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a great marketer. He's one of the best in our generations. He can go out, give a speech. He's just very clear. He tells people like it is, and people love him and they trust him for it. Unfortunately, when it comes to the political side of things, Republicans do not do a really good job of that. And they have to get better at that. They have to show that, look, what we're doing is benefiting this coalition of people. Because, look, we talked about this earlier. These folks, the African-Americans, the Latinos, the young moms, the young people, they just lent us their votes. They're not solid Republicans yet. They lent us their votes in 2024. They're not sold on us yet. So if the Democrats, like you're saying, Brian, if they put up somebody like Stephen A. Smith or someone like, AOC, or someone like even a Pete Buttigieg, who's still very, very popular in Democratic circles, why I have no idea, but he is. I mean, that could be detrimental to the Republican side. So I would tell Republicans, look, become better marketers, become better at your brand. And again, with branding, let's fill in that hole in the marketplace that people are looking for. You know, that we already know what the Democrats stand for. What's that hole in the marketplace that the average voter is looking for? They're looking for someone that's going to make sure that their kids inherit a better life than they did. That's where Republicans need to stand in.
Here, and you just you made me laugh because you mentioned Buttigieg, and here we'll wrap up with a quick little clip here from our President Donald Trump here. 1 second.
And when they took over, Buttigieg, there's no clue. You know, he drives to work on his bicycle with his, in all fairness, with his husband on the back, which is a nice, loving relationship. But he didn't have a clue. And he's actually
a nice, loving relationship. I mean, how can you not laugh? And by the way, like, I do think that there is something, and I'll have to have it back in the show, Jacob, because you can dig into the role of comedy, right? Humor and just having fun with things, and how that just, it diffuses so much. If you can make somebody laugh, right? And he says it so deadpan. This is Trump in general. Like, there's that one speech back in 2016, I think it was. And he's like, I hate mosquitoes. I hate them. Get them away. Speaking of mosquitoes, hello, Hillary. Like, come on, right? Like, it is a Trump stand-up hour. And that right there is why so many folks are just like, dude, I don't know if I would want to, I don't know if I'd want to like have this guy as my uncle, but like, man, I would be rolling and laughing, right? Like, there's just something about him. So we definitely have to take that in consideration, but you're right. At the end of the day, marketing plays such a fundamental role, marketing and sales. And I've been beating this drum since 2019. It doesn't matter how good your ideas are. It doesn't matter if, you have the strongest arguments. What matters is that you're able to sell your ideas to your average person. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean that when you sell your ideas to them, that they're going to become a flag carrying supporter of you. It means, though, that they bought what you sold. And then on the flip side, it's important to also back up what you sold. So there is two parts to the sales and the marketing. It's not just the selling and marketing part, but also the part afterwards. So I do want to make sure, folks, we take away from today's conversation. It's one thing to win the election. It's another thing, though, to actually deliver the goods. And actually, I think that might be part of Trump's Art of the Deal book. I could be wrong. Deliver the goods part. So I'm hoping, I'm praying, man, that we see something in terms of delivering the goods, because I don't want AOC presidency in 2028. I would much rather be, I prefer a Stephen A. Smith relative to that. But even then, I could easily see someone like a Stephen A. once, if he got elected, all of a sudden facing the reality of, I am the person, but I am not the machine, right? I'm the face, but I'm not the back office inner workings. There's still the Obama and Hillary coalitions that, I mean, they were a literal machine. One of my favorite political science professors back when I was up in New York, his wife was the former, I think, number 2 ranking Democrat in New York State. And just to hear the stories of, how the Cuomos and the Clintons would go to battle, and just the underlying infrastructure of the Democratic establishment, and how just deep-seated it was. And that roots from the top. Folks like the Clintons of the world, and like the Obamas of the world, or New York, the Cuomos of the world. So I say all that. Sales and marketing are imperative, but with that comes actually delivering what you promise. That's my final thoughts today. Jacob, bring us home. Where can folks go ahead if they want to learn more? Obviously, they want to go ahead and check out your article over at Newsmax. Tell us where they can go ahead and do that. And also, if folks want to continue the conversation with you, social media links, all that and more.
Sure. Yeah. And let me add one thing too, Brian.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
It's up to people to look. We've gotten away from this, but the founders envisioned a citizen legislator. So what I tell voters is that you need to write to your congressman. You need to call your congressman. You need to call your senators. You need to get out there. Look, these people work for you. And sometimes they forget that. And they need to remember that they were elected in 2024, especially on the GOP side, to deliver the Trump agenda. So if you are a supporter of Donald Trump and you want that agenda delivered that will help Republicans in the 2026 election, it's up to voters to put fire to their elected representatives. So just wanted to get that in there. So, it's just, we forget that often, but these people have offices and they have staff there, and they're there to take your concerns. And so I want to end that. But anyways, if you want to find me, I'm a regular on Newsmax. I write a regular column for our kids. I'm also on Twitter. You can find me at Jacob Lane USA.
Perfect. And like I said, Newsmax is where you can go ahead and check out the article we were discussing today. Energy of CPAC 2025 must be nurtured to grow the GOP. You can find that again one more time over at Newsmax. Jacob Lane, this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. And folks, if you got some value from today's conversation, which I know you did, please do me a favor. Go ahead and give today's episode a share. Tell your friends. And when you do, please tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty. You can find me on X, on Instagram, and on Facebook. As for the show, you can find the show on your favorite video platforms and your favorite podcast platforms. So head over to Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, or X. We air the entire show in its video format over there on those platforms. By the way, we do live stream our shows Monday, Thursdays, and Fridays, because exciting announcement. I've officially joined the Lions of Liberty Network. I know we've been teasing it here for the past few weeks. It's official. It's officially official. I am now ready to roar, part of the Lions of Liberty Pride. So my shows are going to be airing on the Brian Nichols Show feeds Mondays and Fridays, and then over on the Lions of Liberty feeds there on Thursdays. And every other week, we're doing a show all together called Politics, like, ticks that you'd find in a wood because they're bloodsuckers. So if you want to go ahead and check out that, make sure you head over to Lions of Liberty, hit that subscribe button. And by the way, yes, for the actual Brian Nichols Show, you can check the live stream over on your favorite platform, specifically Rumble, YouTube, and X. We're airing it over there. And then for the Brian Nichols Show podcast version, you can still find that over on your favorite podcasting platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube Music, Podcast Addict, wherever it may be. Hit that subscribe button for the Brian Nichols Show RSS feed and the subscribe button for the Lions of Liberty RSS feed, so you don't miss a single time we have a brand new episode going live. And then also all the other guys over at Lions, John Odermatt, Brian McWilliams, and yes, the newly also added Lou Perez. So if you want to go ahead and get some liberty and some laughs, head over to Lions of Liberty. This has been a great conversation, Jacob. Thank you truly for joining us. Any final thoughts as we wrap things up today?
No. Glad, Brian, you're in the Hoosier state. It's a great state. I miss it. So I'm sort of jealous of you because I'm in Virginia now. But,
well, come visit sometime, my man. Get out of the swamp. Come back to the flatlands and prairies, and maybe I'll have a couple tornadoes here for you.
There we go.
Tis the season. Jacob Lane, this has been a great conversation, folks. Please go ahead, give Jacob some love, and when you do, tell him you heard him here over on the Brian Nichols Show. With that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here for Jacob Lane. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.